How did you enjoy that? So good, right? Yes. Awesome. Yeah, that was one of my favorite films from TIFF 17, so I'm glad everyone had a chance to see it. I'm a little out of breath. Whew. But I'm going to introduce our panelists now and then turn it over to them. Yeah, they'll take the stage after I kind of read all of their bios here. Alice Kim is a Toronto-based writer-director whose work explores themes of race, feminism, and belonging. She currently writes while working as an assistant director and has worked on different types of projects, including the feature film Don't Talk to Irene, Netflix's television show Slasher Season 2, as well as an IMAX large format digital film short, XL Outer Worlds, which is set to play in 2019 at the Cinesphere. She is currently working as a second assistant director on an independent feature film. Kendra Terpenning is a costume designer, and she holds a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Costume Design from the University of Victoria. Kendra made the leap to working in film full-time in 2014. Her recent costume design feature film credits include Through Black Spruce, which was directed by Don McKellar, and at this past festival, Goalie, directed by Adriana Maggs, Don't Talk to Irene, directed by Pat Mills, Pie Wacket, directed by Adam McDonald, Clara, directed by Akash Sherman, and The Devout, directed by Connor Gaston, which won Best Feature at the 2016 Leo Awards. Now based in Toronto, Kendra divides her time between Vancouver, Calgary, and Toronto. Zachary Brunn is a multifaceted freelancer in the film industry who has worked on a myriad of union and non-union films and television productions since 2015. He has 15 years' experience in the field of construction and graduated from Humber College's Electrical Construction Maintenance Program in 2012. Zachary has worked on productions for Warner Brothers, NBC, Universal, MGM, The Family Channel, CBC, and has held a variety of positions in a variety of departments, including an electric grip, a dolly grip assistant, rigger, cast and picture car driver, Jenny Op, and an on locations as a production assistant and location support personnel. On his list of accomplishments is being part of such phenomenal production crews, including Don't Talk to Irene, Orphan Black, American Gods, The Good Witch, as well as the well-known adaptation of Stephen King's novel It. Zachary's claim to fame is remaining chipper, funny, and happy, even after an 18-hour day. Well done. So please join me in welcoming our panelists to the stage, and this conversation will be moderated by the director of the film you just saw, Pat Mills. Yeah, on the chairs.
Oh, perfect.
Mics are already on.
Hello? Hi, my name is Pat. I'm the writer-director of Don't Talk to Irene. Thank you for coming today. Before we begin, I just wanted to maybe have a brief talk about what inspired this film. I've always loved dark comedies and teen movies. I've loved a movie called Welcome to the Dollhouse and movies like Election, but then 80s teen movies that have their certain tropes. But I also, I was an outsider in high school and I got bullied a lot. And I always wanted to tell the story of somebody who got bullied but never really changed and didn't let it get them down. And I really wanted to have a feel-good story about a girl who you don't often see as the lead in a movie. And that's really what inspired. But I wanted some chuckles, dancing, and laughter along the way. And that's really what inspired the movie. And I had an amazing time working on this film, partly because of the amazing crew that we had. I feel like everyone can maybe agree that while it may have been stressful, we probably had a pretty good time on the shoot. The weather was really good, which helps. But yeah, so this is Alice, Kendra, and Zach. And yeah, I just want to start the intro. If you guys can just introduce yourself and the job that you had on this film.
So I'm Alice. I was what they call a TAD, which is like the trailer AD or trailer assistant director.
I'm Kendra, and I was the costume designer.
I'm Zach, and I worked in transport. I drove cast and picture cars.
So can you talk us through how you were hired or the hiring process? At what point in the production that you came on board?
I'll start. I was in film school at the time at Humber, and at Humber you need to get a certain amount of internship hours, so that also includes working on set. So I saw that the second assistant director, Christina, had posted on, there's a lot of Facebook groups to find jobs within the film industry, which are very, very useful. And they were looking
tell you
for
what those are.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, they're real good. And yeah, so she had posted looking for someone to be one of the assistant directors or even a production assistant, also known as a PA, to help with their film, and it was a great learning experience, and so she hired me from there, and I'd never met her before, and this was actually the very first film I'd ever worked on.
Great.
I'm trying to remember. I'm fairly sure that our production manager, whose name is Jessica Adams, heard my name, and I think I got good feedback from a previous feature that I had done. Yeah, I think I did. I think I did a feature called Kiss and Cry with Luke Billick and Sarah from Degrassi, and they passed my name on to Jess, who brought me in for an interview with Pat. So costume designers falls into a key creative category, so I sort of have to have the technical side of knowing how to handle the logistics and the budget, but also actually sort of impress that I'm the right sort of artistic person to fulfill Pat's vision. So I had a job interview where I kind of pitched out designs and stuff like that, and I really loved the script, so I was just really enthusiastic, and I got picked, thank goodness.
And I think that from my perspective, if you can tell somebody's actually enthusiastic, it really, really helps. I'm like, oh, they're going to actually do a really good job because they actually love this character as much as I do.
Yeah.
And it's kind of fun when you're interviewing somebody for a film because you get to just talk about movies. Like, what movies do you like? What do we want this to look like? The colors of the movies that we love, and how can we, recreate that magic that you see in other films? And we had a similar bond in terms of our
we
references.
like a lot of the same movies, and I'd seen a lot of your references, and I also really love Election.
Yeah,
so we just really just jived and talked creatively, and I feel like I might have even met Michelle that day.
Probably,
because she was in, and that was really exciting because she was such Michelle plays Irene, and was an amazing collaborator. It's wonderful to get that much out of an actor that early.
And Zach?
As for myself, I started in location support personnel on a family channel show called Wonderful Waynies. I got to know the transport team really well there, and they really liked my work. I'd help out around base camp, set, wherever they needed me, pretty much. Just like you mentioned, Pat, ambitious, wanted to be there, And eventually when this came around, they offered it to me because one of the drivers was leaving and they needed a replacement. And I managed to climb on board, which was phenomenal. It was an absolute blast.
Right. Yeah, we shot this June 2016 in Hamilton. And we really, really lucked out because I feel like every single day, except for one, they were shooting exteriors. It was like a beautiful sunny day. Yeah. When we shot the plaza scene, it was almost too sunny because we had some issues with some actors refusing to put on sunblock. And at the age of 90,
So
you want to
much
make
sun
sure they're
burning.
wearing
So yeah, that was really hot day.
Yeah. So can you guys walk me through what the role of each department is? So like the AD department, the costumes department, transport department.
For sure. So the assistant director department is essentially, if you think of the film set as a human body, then the AD department is like the nervous system. So we are in charge of communication, making sure everyone gets the right information that they need throughout the day. And even during pre-production, you're prepping the movie and scheduling it, making sure that everything is logistical. So if the director is the creative side of the the production stuff, the assistant director takes care of all the scheduling, so the director doesn't have to worry about time constraints and stuff, and we keep people on time and make sure actors know where they are. And also, if you saw a lot of background actors there, like in the high school and stuff, it's also placing them and giving them actions, and so you get a little fun with that.
The thing about the AD department is it's you might not think of it as a creative role, but it's if that is not done well, everything falls apart. And they just keep everything running very, very smoothly. And the AD department's funny because they have their own set of rules. They're always talking to each other on their their walkie-talkies.
Yeah.
And most of the time, you as a director have no idea what they're talking about or what their stress is, but that's actually part of the job,
It totally is.
Yeah, definitely. And Kendra?
The costume department I costume the actors. I'm sort of like, I think of the costumes as kind of like a trifecta. We have to work with the director artistically to create their vision of the film. And as a big part of that, work with the actors to make sure that they feel their character, that they're living in and embodying the person that they're portraying. We work with the producers also from a very logistic and budgetary standpoint. I've known I wanted to be a costume designer for virtually my whole life, and I had no idea just how much of that is accounting. Like it's an alarming amount. I definitely dropped math really fast, and that was a terrible idea. So we work really closely with the AD department because a movie isn't shot where we started rolling on scene 1, Irene in a dumpster. Although ironically, that was very close to the beginning of production, I think, but that's uncommon. We shoot all over the place. So we jump in a single day. We'll be working on the story day 1, and then it's story day 5, and then it's story day 7. And I have to know whose costume and where is it, and is it got every single element of it in there for continuity. So it's very practical, it's very creative, it's very logistic and budget management kind of thing.
And an example of that is we shot the plaza scene, the dance scene, over 2 days. And did you have to do any like cleaning of an outfit in between those?
God, yeah.
That's
I mean,
another
it was hot. They sweated like so much.
And so you're everyone's wrapped, but you're like making sure the costumes are okay for the actor to put on the next day that look like they haven't been worn yet.
And
so
actually,
that's a huge
like
thing.
those were very like we made those obviously for specialty for the film, and they actually we were tweaking on the day between the first day and the second day. Tesh's costume we had to like massively improve because it wasn't staying in place. It was bunchy, and like I think it kept riding up and becoming a crop top, and like we were fighting against Tesh's costume intensely. So we had to very creatively problem solve. Yes, no, that's what I do. I creatively problem solve about clothes. And that's my whole job.
And another thing about what you were doing is our producers, Allison and Mike, really loved and respected you because you were really respectful of budget. And I remember when one of the older actors was wearing shoes. She had foot problems, and these cheap shoes that we bought for the production were like really uncomfortable. So we had to go out and buy like $200 Nike shoes, but Kendra was like, it's gonna go over budget. Yeah. So then what our producer was like, yeah, Kendra, buy the shoes. I'll buy them off of you after. Yeah. So she has this pair of white sneakers at home. I don't think she ever wears.
I actually do in the end of it. But yeah, no, my role is very, very responsible to the budget. I actually think that's like really, really, really substantial. And it's often much smaller than you'd expect. This was a very small amount considering like watching the movie back. I'm like, I really love looking at it and being like, oh yeah, we did a lot with a little, which you can. You just gotta, you practice really.
Yeah,
you know where to go.
And Zachary?
As for transport, I like to think of transport as like the behind-the-scenes cogs and wheels. None of the art that's going on set is going to happen unless everybody's there and all the gear's there. So like transport's responsible for coming in the morning, getting generator ready, getting base camp ready, bringing people and crew and gear to and from set from base camp. Or it really is the behind-the-scenes be-all, end-all. If transport isn't working, nothing's working.
I was one of like the departments that's like arty and people know what a costume is, and it gets like awards recognition and that kind of stuff. I would say like my department lives and dies on the success of actually these two departments. If transpo's there and all is well, great. If the ADs are tight and running a tight ship, I look fancy, but it actually is so dependent on the two of them and also food.
It really is an overall collaboration. If everybody doesn't work together, it just falls apart. It can.
And I find that like all three of our departments also ensure like the comfort of cast as well, because as a driver, you're driving in like cast members or even the director and producers and stuff like that. And with Kendra's
rush
department,
hour on the 403.
It's nasty going to Hamilton. But yeah, even with Kendra's department, making sure that they're comfortable in their costumes with their footwear as well. And then for ADs to make sure that people get the privacy they need and where they're supposed to be so they don't feel rushed, and preparing them for whatever scenes they have coming up.
For sure. Another thing was we shot in Hamilton, and most of the people were coming in from Toronto. So the transport department would be in charge of getting actors to set every day. So the actors would, wake up at 5, get to their front of their house at 6, get picked up, drive for 45 minutes to an hour, then arrive on set. So it's like, there's all these parts of making a film where it begins so early and way earlier than a call time. It's always something
for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Transport locations, first one's in, last one's out.
Yeah. And the bigger the production, when you get to a proper full base camp, which is the white trucks that I'm sure everybody sees all over town, let's say the call time's 8 a.m., the ADs, the transpo, the wardrobe and hair and makeup, one representative from basically each department in various ways have been there for hours, often around an hour. But I mean, if you look at something that we do in Toronto, like it, or say Suicide Squad with really heavy makeup application, it could be 5 hours. It's very, really no one's exaggerating when we say we work an average of 14 to 16 hours a day.
Yeah.
For sure. Even electrical rigging coming in early in the morning on a pre-call, it could, if it's a small setup, an hour. If it's a really big setup, 2, 3, easy.
The thing I always think about making a film is almost like summer camp, because you're trapped with the same people for all day and all night.
I like that.
And all these different things happen. You change your relationships. There's drama. It's a lot of fun. You bond over things. It's pretty, when it's cold out, it's you see who the good people are. The good personalities.
It's so hard when it's cold out.
Yeah. Did you guys have a favorite part of filming Don't Talk to Irene?
I think we can all say it was Jean.
Oh, Jean. She still leaves voicemails for Christina at Christmas, just so you know. Yeah, it's very,
Jean
very
is the
sweet.
very, very short ensemble dancer who was 90 years old, the really petite white-haired lady who joins later on. No, I mean, there was infinity. It's a really,
But I
really
remember one
positive
day when
shoot.
we were shooting at the Plaza, the dance sequence, because as an AD, your job is to keep an eye on all the cast and make sure that you know where they are at all times. But we had lost Jean, and we're like, "Where is Jean?" And she comes just strolling out of the pizza shop, at that plaza, and she's like, "I just wanted a bite to eat," and she just has a full pizza.
She turned 90 years old on the set of this film.
Oh, yeah.
But she didn't want anybody to know, which is adorable. But I remember I would hear this angelic voice singing every once in a while. I'm like, what is that pretty voice? And it would be Jean, who's a trained opera singer, just singing to herself in the corner. And it was the kind of thing where I really wanted to give her a line, but the whole thing about making a film when it was a director, it's everybody is budgeted, actors are budgeted for whether they have a line or more than a line. So, and she was already a special skills extra, I believe, because she had to learn choreography, that if I gave her one line, it would cost the production way too much money. I was like, oh man, I just want to give her a line. Anyway, that's...
What was your favorite part?
Mine? I would probably say the plaza dance scene, because we were shooting with 2 cameras at the same time, and both cameras were, one was on a dolly, one was on a Steadicam. I had 2 monitors, and everything looked good because everything's moving, and all the colors were the amazing costumes that Kendra made, and all the actors were having a really good time, and I just saw something that people had been spending a lot of time rehearsing, and I just saw it come to life. With the music, was playing for them as well, and Mark, who was our choreographer, was really, really good at rallying the troops together and keeping everybody really happy. So I feel like that day made me, but it was not without its stresses, because Jean, the 9-year-old, refused to put sunblock on her face, and we're all just worried that she was gonna fall over, but she was fine. She knows her body more than anybody else, I guess. Was there any part of the filming that was most challenging for either of the departments?
I think for Kendra and I, we can say that a lot of the cast, there would be 10 people in per day, because you have that dance ensemble, you have the principal, the main cast, and then also 60 background to make sure that they're processed. So getting into hair and makeup and wardrobe together, and just timing it out with Kendra, making sure okay, I'm gonna send you this person to get dressed while this person's getting makeup, and just timing all of that out. So it was a little bit challenging to make sure that everyone was good at the same time.
Mine would be that on a film of this scale, and very frequently kind of in some of the stuff I've done in my independent work and non-union work in my career, there's me and one person. And like a really standard baseline wardrobe crew is 4 people, a costume designer, the assistant costume designer, a set supervisor who exclusively stands near Pat, the director, and maintains continuity, and makes sure the actors are either not too hot or not too cold, and the truck supervisor who like keeps the wardrobe clean and where it needs to be at all times. So 4 is a really baseline crew, and we were working with 2. And so it's sort of doing all the things plus double. We were taking on like a lot more roles than we should. So it was sort of juggling that, juggling a small budget, and then like a single negative memory is just I kept having to move my damn wardrobe because we were in that old folks home for like the whole production, which was amazing. I got given an old folks room, and then like 3 or 4 times I'd like spread out and set up, and then we'd be like, you know what's better than the room we're gonna shoot in? Your room, Kendra. And the light is amazing. And the DP would come in and just be like, I'm loving this room. I think we'll use this. It's cool to pack up and move, right? And I'm like, yes.
It was not fun to deliver that message.
Like, I got really aggro a few times. Sorry. So that was like only like that was like a single kind of memory of a stressor. For like these shoots are hard when you do it, but it's such a positive memory the whole shoot.
Yeah. Honestly, yeah. I going back to what you were saying before about budgets and that as well. That there was the one day, I guess the hardest day that I had on the show, and it wasn't all that hard. It was just more stressful than anything. Was we had a the big dance number, and I was picking up 6, 7, 8 different people at 3 different locations in order to be on time, on set, for call in Hamilton from Toronto in rush hour. And when you don't have as big a crew, you know, like you mentioned, Kendra, it falls upon the rest of the department, whoever's in that department. So.
Well, my challenge, I've just been thinking about like what the hardest day for me is when we were shooting Irene talking to the poster, so she's lying in bed. And what we had done was we shot that in the actual house, and I wanted to have the angle like far enough, as wide as possible, but we're directly ahead. So what we had to do, because the ceiling got in the way, we shot it facing the wall. So we put up a mattress against the wall, and Irene is sitting there standing up, pretending to be lying down. And we found the biggest room in the house, which was the master bedroom. But in May, when there's about 15 people in a master bedroom, it gets very, very hot. And that's always a challenge because not only is like crew hot and starting to get like really uncomfortable, the actress is like actually sweating. So it becomes a problem for makeup, and they have to constantly go in. You can't use takes because they're soaking wet. And it wasn't like the air conditioning was on, but nobody felt it. And as a director, I get really, really stressed out when people are upset and they're not getting along with each other, and they're getting a bit angry with one another when it's just like we're all in a really uncomfortable situation. And I found that for me, I was like, just get through it, just get through it. And I hate that because you know everyone's sort of in hell, as you are, your actress is in hell, and you have like 4 more pages to shoot, but you're so low budget that you can't say, that's our day, let's just pick this up when we can get it. Yeah. So that was really hard for me, just because I don't like people uncomfortable, and it's like not fair. Yeah. You know, people have been working for 12 hours, and now we're all sweating in a tiny box. Not cool. So what other departments would you say that each of you collaborate with the most? I feel like, well, you probably collaborate with every department.
Yeah, the AD department, literally, you just have to talk to every single department and see what their needs are, what's needed where, and like who needs to know what. But if you want to get into the film industry, like being a production assistant or even an assistant director at some entry level is a really good way to get to know set, especially let's say if some of you like don't know what you want to do. I feel like ADing is a great way to get into it because then you meet all these people and you meet every single department and you see how a production works. And even as like a director, let's say, like if you have the knowledge of like every department and how long everything takes, then you have a greater appreciation and understand how hard everyone is working to get things going. And yeah, the AD department literally just talks to everybody.
I work really closely with props and production design and the DP. Like I really want, like in my work, I really, really want the costumes to be really unified in the overall aesthetic concept. So I work with props on a very practical level because sometimes they handle purses, sometimes I handle purses, sometimes, you know, who's grabbing Irene's backpack? Does Irene's backpack make sense with her clothes? Like, you know, like that kind of thing. This was a bigger than usual collaboration with the production designer, Kaylin, because we had to pick a fabric that she's comfortable living in her set for the vast majority of the film, and that I'm comfortable incorporating into like the star hero costumes of the entire film. So that was really fun. We joined the long line of wonderful films where someone takes the curtains down and turns it into an outfit. And it was great. It was a really fun, we kind of debated like just how ugly will this fabric be? And I'm delighted with what we landed on. It made me so happy. So I really like to talk to the DP in the art department because it's like there's nothing worse when you walk into, this actually happened to me on a film recently. There's a hero costume of a red dress, and it is critical to the plot that it's a red dress. There's no changing that. And on the day that we were shooting a scene where she's the character's in a house, we walked in and it had the largest red couch I've ever seen in my entire life, and the whole scene takes place on that red couch. So red dress on a red couch in a very warm lit filter with a lot of red.
That's a floating head.
It was. Thankfully the dress was also sparkly, but I walked in and was like, damn, I wish we'd talked about this. It actually did turn out to be a mistake, and they bought a gray couch, and it didn't fit in the door. Stuff happens. But yeah, you want to like, I prep a lot with those departments in advance to make sure that the composition is beautiful.
Transport pretty well comes in contact with every department. The ADs call us up to bring up actors. Wardrobe will call us up to bring up any kind of clothing, anything. Irons? You?
Yeah,
pretty well. They're, like I said earlier, they're the sort of the lifeblood of things. If transport breaks down, things don't tend to work. There's a lot of different departments as you get higher up as well, like transport, picture cars. The cars in the background, or the hero car that our heroes driving in the story. But as a whole, we pretty well touch every single department with any needs, really, any needs, as long as we're crewed properly.
Yeah.
yeah.
So we touched upon the challenging parts of the positions. What do you like best about your job that you do? I know that you also write and direct, but
As an assistant director.
Yeah.
As an assistant director, I find that the best part of the job is just getting to know everyone. Like the crew, you get, like make some of the greatest friends, and like the film industry in Toronto is big, but it's also very small. Like once you work with someone, you will probably work with them again on the next show, or like down the road and stuff like that. But yeah, it's getting to know the cast and the crew. I think it's one of the best things because you just create some great bonds.
yeah, great.
I suppose the moment where I'm at monitor and I see my composition up on screen successfully, and just like know that that's right. There's great moments and fittings when actors really just like sit into the role through their costumes, for lack of a better term. That is great, and I know we're connecting. Also, when they ask to take the clothes home at the end, that's a compliment. Which a ton of our people did. Deb's definitely wearing all
I
of her
still wear
clothes.
some of the wardrobe. I do.
The crew even buys some at the
Yeah,
end
and then
as
crew
well.
buys some sometimes. So it's sort of just the satisfaction of kind of looking up and being like, yes, that was right. It felt good. Also being able to say yes. I love when somebody throws me a curveball and I'm prepared enough to say yes. I hate saying no. I have to sometimes. And just if something really terribly unexpected happens, or we're going to pull a scene up or something, anything can happen. And I love having enough foresight and being prepared enough to just be like, oh yeah, we can absolutely throw Tesh into a jacket with a hat on the exterior now and shoot that scene really quickly, which happened.
I'd have to say the same. I like being in a sticky wicket. I like it because things get planned out and figured out as best of the ability, but when it comes down to brass tacks, when you're on location, anything can change, anything can muddle up. And I guess the excitement of being on your toes, you know what I mean? As well as with electrical work for me specifically, like you mentioned, seeing your work in the monitor, you know what I mean? Seeing it on screen and realizing everything that comes together behind the scenes to make that happen.
Yeah, you have a moment live in present on the set, being like, I'm making a movie. We do it, and I think like a lot of people who are in this room are curious about that because that's something inside of you is just like movies are the coolest of the things, so we're gonna go ahead and make them. So it's a really powerful moment just to know that that's there. I assume you get that, like you're living for it, right?
Yeah, for sure. So I think we have time for Q&A. If anybody has any questions you'd like to ask specifically about anything.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Hi. I was just wondering what the movie budget was, please.
The movie budget we normally don't answer, but the I think the budget was between like 1.3 and 1.4 million, which is in the feature film world is tiny in terms of a budget. So
it sounds like a lot because we said the word million, but it's not.
Yeah, it's not a lot at all.
Hi. Great. Thank you so much. So my question is specifically for Pat. So you write the script and you like get the funding from Telefilm and Shaw, and then you may or may not have like a writing agent. Like, how do you approach producers to jump on board and to like essentially hire everybody else who does the wonderful jobs they do?
So the question is, how do I like get a producer on board to then make the film? Well, the whole thing is when this was in the very, very early stages of the idea, what I was doing is I was applying to a lot of development programs just to get it on the industry's radar. And because I was entry level, I had just graduated from film school, and I wrote a short film script that this is actually based on. And I applied to arts councils for it. So I was able to get some money to do some writing and play around with short films by the arts councils. So I would, to give advice if you're interested in this, is search whatever funding sources there are for emerging people and get on the radar of the industry. And what I'd done once I had this short film is I applied to a program at TIFF called Pitch This. And I was able to pitch the project, and it was a competition, and I ended up winning, which then I hadn't gotten anything from Telefilm before then. Then Telefilm sponsored it, so then I won a prize through Telefilm, and then I got on their radar. So I think my advice to you, if you're interested in this, is to find any development program there is out there for emerging writers, and you will meet producers through those programs. And producers are, for the most part, eager to mentor and find new people to work with. So finding a mentor is a huge thing. I don't know if any of you had a mentor while you were pursuing your career at all.
God, no, and I wish I had. It was so good. I mentor people now. Hi. Here. Hi. I mentor now because there was no one, and it was lonely and difficult.
I never had one solid mentor, but every different position that I'd try out for essentially got, there's no one here to do that. You do that. You know what I mean? Whoever seemed more senior, I'd always try and get as much knowledge or information out of them as to, okay, where are we going? How's the best way to be prepared, or regardless of department.
Yeah, really. And I find that in the film industry as well, like as skilled as you are at your job, and I feel like this goes for any job really, it's your personality that really, like you spend so much time with your team that you really have to get along, and if your personalities click, then that's all you need, and a good attitude.
God. Yeah, be nice. Oh, this industry. God. Good Lord. Like, I mean, it's just like there's a lot of kind of fun, like, stories and behind the scenes of like how intense or crazy or angry this person is, and actually those are often very true. And I feel like, especially in a room full of people coming up to might join the industry, it is so easy to be nice and pleasant. This is such a fun job. There is absolutely no reason to enter anything with negativity. Problem solving is a cooperative experience.
Yes.
Be kind. We're all working on the same thing.
Agreed. And another thing is, this is something I always struggled with when I was first starting out, is I got really shy and embarrassed about asking for help. Don't be shy. Like, push through, find somebody's email address and ask if they can mentor you or shadow you, or if you could take them out for a coffee. Like, if they don't want to do it, they'll say no. What's the worst that can happen? That.
Very true.
So you'd be surprised by how many people want to help out somebody young and emerging in the industry.
There's a question over there. Glow sticky.
I think a lot of the students here are high school students, and I was just wondering more about your post-grad education. Did you feel that it helped you with where you're at now? Did it focus on pre or post-production? Those kind of questions with...
Oh, may I?
Yes.
You may.
So this might not be true anymore, but when I left high school and went for my post-grad, there were no training programs in all of Canada that focused on costume design for film. That might not be true anymore. So I did the only other thing that made sense, and I went into training for theater. That set me up with a certain baseline skill set that I do feel hugely contributes to like my success now. And I just used success in the term of like, I do work full time in film, and that's success. Like, I'm not a famous person. I just work full time, and it's wonderful. That was awesome. And I was so unprepared to work in film because nobody had told me how to do that. It's not the same as theater. You are not going to understand the paperwork. Someone is going to give you a call sheet, and you're going to be like, what am I looking at? It's the most complicated document in the world. So I'm happy I went with my training program. I definitely wish specifically for costume design there had been something for me to had picked up, but I did the cold call. I pulled my socks up and I phoned someone I didn't know and asked if they'd have a cup of coffee and talk to me about film. And they said those magical words, "Will you volunteer for me?" And then we all did for years, which is going to be a huge part. And it's actually, unfortunately, like, it's a good and a bad. It's a wonderful way to learn. There's many wonderful programs in Toronto that can teach you in a very practical way that are volunteer-based. And I think a lot of us did them.
But yeah, and just to like move off of that as well, like this film I did on a volunteer basis, and I worked for like 3 out of the 5 days we'd shoot per week. But the AD team that worked on this, like, we drived really well. They really liked me, and I worked really hard, this being my very first film. And they continue to bring me on stuff now that's paid. So if you stick with it and you meet the right people and who will, like, want to be your mentor, or, like, you can shadow them and learn so much, they'll start bringing you on things that you'll get paid for and all that stuff. And now they've set me up, and I've learned a lot.
Did any of us take conventional post-secondary film school?
I did. I went to Western, and I studied film and finished there. And then I went to Humber because I wanted more of a hands-on practical experience. I did learn a lot at Humber. I did not finish because I started working and getting on-set experience. But I do find that having, depending on what kind of branch of film you want to get into, theory does help in some aspects because you can be a little more critical about things and all that stuff. But also, I found that getting the hands-on experience was really, really important because sometimes when you get on film sets, you'll meet people who have never worked on a set, which is fine. Mm-hmm. But sometimes, like, having that extra, like, film school background, like, you'll kind of know set etiquette and the do's and don'ts on set, which will help you a little bit more because, yeah.
We have our own language of how we work and talk on set. We have nuanced etiquette rules that we all follow to kind of help the system kind of churn along smoothly. And that's something where if you can learn that through film school, wonderful. If you can learn that through a mentor, great. Definitely it's an advantage to walk onto set the first day with like some sense of like, where do you get your coffee and go to the bathroom? And how do you use your walkie? And that kind
And like the chain of command is very, very important in
sure.
film.
Yes,
well.
yes.
like, don't stand where the actors are looking in their scene. Stay out of the eye line.
Don't stand in the doorway because someone's carrying a huge piece of equipment. Like, that kind of stuff is always good to know.
Yeah.
And knowing, like you were saying, like our shorthand, like what fire watch is.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's when you're just, someone's there solely just to watch the equipment and the trucks, making sure no one's breaking into anything, making sure, like, equipment's not breaking. If it's raining, that it's covered. So just knowing that shorthand as well.
Even something as simple as behind.
Yeah.
Yep. 10-1.
10-1 behind, yeah.
Yeah. Which
10-1
basically means if someone's coming behind you, you announce that you're behind them. So God forbid they turn around.
That's
and knock you over
inter-industry,
with the
so
camera.
hopefully if any of you've worked in the food
Rest-
industry, you've
yeah.
all also know to stay behind, but just
hop
do it.
behind.
So I went to film school at Ryerson, which is pretty practical. But I find that when you're making student films, you know what it's like to be on the set of a student film, which is not like being on a professional set at all. So what I would suggest is over your your summer break or whatever, try and find a PA job on a set. And sometimes there are jobs in the office, but I would try and get, if you're really interested in being a crew member, try and find some sort of position in as a PA on set. I remember when I was in high school and I was your age, I saw a posting for extras on a film, so I called this number, and they called me back and they said, we don't need extras that day, but we need volunteer PAs. Would you do it? So what I did, don't do this, I skipped school, didn't tell my parents where I was going, worked on a film set downtown Toronto all day, past 3:30, and I was too polite to say I have to call home or I have to leave. My mom ended up calling the police because I had gone missing because I didn't tell anybody. But it was an amazing experience to work like 10 hours when you're 16, you're not in school. And I learned the ins and outs of what it was to be like on a film set, even though that was super low budget. It was like some crappy action movie. Anyway, that never came out, but that doesn't matter. But I would suggest be an extra, as Kendra I think.
I did. I'm from Vancouver, and when I was in high school, it was at like the absolute Vancouver peak boom, and so I BG'd because I actually got an opportunity to special skills BG, which pays hella good money, because I played really like high level soccer. So I was like on some CBS Kids teen thing that also probably didn't come out, and I was on a soccer team, and I got to observe set, and really that's what it was. Like what BG is really, you're meant to be quiet and do what you're instructed to do, which is true for PAing, and those might be entry level positions, but if you're there to observe quietly, there's like just a wealth of knowledge you can suck up in BG, and you're gonna get paid.
And you like half the time you're just waiting. You're just waiting. All those high school students, they just sat in a room on their laptops. They just did work, and then when we're like, okay, it's time to go to set, they'd be ready to go, and then you dress them in and you just give them background instructions, like walk across this hallway, and that's it.
Laugh at Irene.
Laugh at
she's
Irene.
a sad person.
So that's a fun thing to do.
I just have to add, one of the benefits we have here in Canada too is the position of location support personnel, which is a really, really good bottom rung of the ladder to start out on to get experience. Just because in the States they use regular private security, whereas up here we have a position in the locations department, overnight watch, day watch, general labor help, and you can learn all sorts of different friggin' parts of the industry while working in this position and get to know people and make contacts to get work for later.
And like if you're on the set in a general way and you're doing good and you're polite and you're professional, like be professional. And there's you're just like itching to get in that props room and start playing around and doing some stuff, or scenic or wardrobe or ADing. Find a moment and you can speak to somebody about that, and we'll snap you. We'll get you. You can just straight into our department. I'll take you.
Anyone's interested in volunteering on a feature film, I'm looking for people. Volunteers are welcome. You can find my email.
That's great. Any other? Yep.
Yeah. Oh, wait.
Oh, someone's
Shoot.
got the mic. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Hey, my name's Aaron Newby.
Hi.
Hey, Cara. Hey, everybody. So I'm a producer, director, and actor. I've been funding and working on my web series for over 5 years now. So I just have a question. It's before you got funding from all these distributors and everything, were you just self-funding everything, and like was there a budget that you had in mind, or were you just like, I'm gonna get this project done? Because this show that I've been working on, the first episode's a party, and I've been trying to shoot this pilot episode for maybe like 6 different times, because I'd go episode to episode, like if it wasn't working. So like it'd be episode 1 or episode 4 next week. So I tried shooting this like so many times, and I don't have enough money to just like pay every single person so like I find it really hard to get serious people to show up, and then also to get people to help you on board. But then sometimes I'll tell people, hey, I'm doing a show, and they're like, what's it about? And then they're like, I'm down, and I have another friend who wants to help out too, and we'll shoot it, we'll help you do it. So there's some people that are like automatically down to help, and then I find it really hard to just get some people to show up. And then it's also like, okay, I'm at this point now where I just can't wait anymore, I'm gonna pay. And then some people are like, why are you paying? You can get it done for free like this. And then it's just like all over the place. I'm trying to find a good system where everybody's just kind of on board and, you know, more in it for the favor system rather than I'm gonna give you $100 that I don't have. And you know what I mean? You mentioned there was groups and stuff like that before, but I still find it really hard to find people.
Right, it's a competitive city right now. Yeah, you're talking about like a perfect storm of circumstances that I think is very common, actually. It's a simultaneous thing where you've got to find your tribe, really. I actually would consider almost anyone on Irene in our experience as someone I could call on if I needed help with something in a volunteer-based place. And you want to pay people, and you always want to get into a position to pay people, because that's the industry, and we're here to be working professionals who get paid for our work. You know, move past the arts and into, like, it's not just art. This is commerce too, and this is a serious job that we're well paid for, especially those of us who are union, because that's a part of it. So, yeah, like that's a really tough circumstance, and Toronto's in a bit of a growing stage right now. This is a blossoming city. We are in studio expansion. We are in high competition. We are in some departments, we are sweeping people off the street with the right skill set because we cannot stay staffed. So it's like there's a certain point where somebody who maybe would love to just like chime in on wardrobe and just be there for you for those days that you need that coordination and that help, and they're like, but why would I? Because I can roll into Star Trek and get paid for my day. And I think you're talking about like a really, really challenging first few steps. Can you speak to that kind of funding?
Well, it's tricky. I mean, my advice would be to volunteer on other people's web series as well, and then you're going to meet a lot of a community who volunteers and want more experience, and then you can bring them on board. I shot a short film a long time ago, and I had the same situation. We couldn't pay anybody. Everything was volunteer, and people didn't show up. And this is my producer kept on saying, well, you get what you pay for. I'm like, well, that's not fair. But I think that if I were to go back and try and do that short film again, I probably would try and spend more time trying to somehow find money to pay people to take it more seriously. Now there's Indiegogo and Kickstarter and those things. Maybe I would go that route, because I think that the film suffered because literally our Steadicam operator called the day that he was supposed to arrive with his gear and said he couldn't do it. So then I had this like movie that was supposed to be very like fluid and pretty, didn't end up looking that good because it was handheld. So it's like, but I learned, well, it was free, so I kind of got the product that I could afford, but at the same point, it is really hard when, you know, people do want experience, but when we're in a city that's so busy right now, and when I shot that, I think The Incredible Hulk was being shot in Toronto, and everybody in Toronto was working on like that $150 million production. So we had that same problem. So I would my advice, if I were to have any, is volunteer on other productions, so you can, you know, I'll rub your back, you rub mine, kind of go with that philosophy.
There's like a lot of contests for funding and stuff like that with smaller film festivals that try to like become known. I forget, there's one. No, I'm lying. But like I feel like if you look out for like small grants or prize money or like even just pitching competitions, and like it also depends, I think, on the content. I think if you like share with people like a little bit more about your project, I don't know how deep you go into the scope of your project with other people, but like just letting them know, so then like if they're invested in your content, then maybe it'll motivate them to like, you know what I mean? Or giving them a little more creative control and stuff like that. But I do agree, like volunteering on things is really helpful, or finding people who have other connections, or if you do have some sort of a budget that you can pay some people, maybe paying like keys, and then they will pull favors and bring their people out, which is kind of like my experience on smaller budget things where they pay like the key kind of creatives, and then they'll like pull the favors, and then down the road they'll fulfill those favors. But it's not usually ideal if you're not paying everyone, if some people are being paid. But that's one way around it.
And another thing for a volunteer position is the Canadian Film Centre have exercises. They have a program for film directors, writers, producers, and they're constantly shooting their exercises. And you're able to meet people who are like, people just get their first start when they're in the industry at the Canadian Film Centre. You're able to meet like young directors, but also crew members, and everybody's volunteering. I volunteered on CFC Productions.
I volunteered on a CFC production on Saturday.
There you go. There you go.
And I got into it that way. That's one of the cold call results, is that I was able to go to the CFC, and I did tons of rounds of them. And it's there are some that are just a single short film, so that's a very good little microcosm of what you're going to do. There's others that you do like 8 in 4 days. So that's a really good trial of your stamina and your skill, and it's really good. And you meet a lot of people. And like, I met somebody at the film in CFC who then asked me to do their short film, and then they did their short film. I did their short film, and that went well. And then they asked me to, he was actually producing a feature in Calgary, which is how I went to Calgary for the first time. And then I did that feature, and that's like how I quit my day job and went full time into film. Yeah, highly recommend the CFC.
And CFC also keeps you on a roster, so if they like you, they keep you on there. And then other people that do go and move on and do their own projects, you'll have a lot of CFC alumni there, and like they'll bring all their people there as well, I find.
The one I just worked on was the PM of Don't Talk to Irene, and he's moving into directing. And so I came out and helped him out because I got to work on Irene, which was wonderful. So he scratched my back. I just did a CFC short for him, scratched his.
And another thing is you learn respect. And I remember when I worked in transport for the CFC productions. I was the truck driver / equipment loader. Like, I was the guy in charge of all the equipment, picking up the equipment and dropping it off. And a producer treated me with no respect whatsoever. And I was like, I will never work with you. And she's not working as a producer anymore. So it's
People never forget.
yeah.
No, people never.
And I think that's our cue that we might be wrapped.
Oh, there's one question
Oh, there's one.
waving over
Yeah.
there, yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
I have a question. So I want to know about the little montage that happened in the intro. If the costume that Michelle made, if that was all her, or if it was Kendra who made the costume.
The one that resulted in the very
Yes.
bad cheerleader costume?
Yes.
I believe I made the very bad cheerleader costume. And then actually, I believe Pat was like, it's not bad enough. And I like rehacked up the edges and added the safety pins, and I think we doubled down on how crappy it was.
I actually remember that day.
Yeah,
I remember that day.
and then we recreated like a kind of several beats that would add up to it, which it did. That visually worked really nicely in the edit. So I made the one that, because it actually has to survive multiple days on set and a big run, as you can see. She sprints home in it. So I made that costume, and then we recreated it with Michelle's hands.
Yeah.
Which is fun. Montages are like the devil for wardrobe because there's so much to put into it. So that one, I'm delighted by how well that turned out.
I feel like there's one hand I see right there. Yep. Yep.
Like someone basically punching someone in the face, and then also like the long-term effects of bullying, because like it's not always like a happy ending to all that.
Sorry, could you repeat the question? Because half of it was microphoned.
All right. So when you guys were making this film, did you consider the realism factor of like making it not more of a fairy tale sort of thing? Because like if you punch someone in the face, that won't exactly end well. And also bullying, just because you're good at something doesn't mean you're going to be on the cheerleading team.
Well, it wasn't necessarily about like becoming a cheerleader, but it was actually about going after something that you wanted to go after. And that was the point of the movie. And in terms of the punching scene, yeah, it doesn't send a great message. We probably shouldn't react with violence. But for me, it kind of worked into somebody who has no confidence learning to fight back, and that was really what it was more about. A better writer would get out of that situation without a punch, but I feel like Sarah was so mean I wanted to see her punched. But yeah.
So I have a question. So my question was, what makes a film great for you guys, and are there certain qualities that make a film better for you?
Deep question.
Kendra, you start.
Okay, I'm gonna just kind of go like big picture and say that my favorite thing about the industry in general is that there's absolutely no correct answer to that question. What is great for me and what makes a film extra great for me is totally different than everyone else on stage and in this audience, and we're all right. And I really love the subjective analysis of that. It's a really interesting balance between an artistic merit and a commerce viability that splits between art and entertainment. So I really, really love that that's not answered. I watch a lot of movies, so I don't think there's a single thing that makes me truly excited. I get really jazzed by, currently, I get really jazzed if there's female-centric content that is going to properly have proper representation. That's an enormous amount of where I focus my attention and energy and where I put my money when I go to the
We
theater.
have to wrap up because
okay,
it's
bye.
time and everyone's got to leave. So thank you for coming, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you
Great.
so much.
I hope
Good
we
luck.
were helpful.
Come volunteer. I need them.
If anybody has any questions and while you're wandering out, like you can come ask us questions. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.